Welcome to StaarCast, a show about tarot, divination, and all things mystical. StaarCast is a celebration of StaarCon, the Southeastern Tarot Artist and Readers Conference. I'm Amy Mauser, and here's your host, Christiana Gaudet.
Thank you so much, Amy, for that introduction, and welcome everyone to another episode of StaarCast. This is the podcast where we celebrate StaarCon, and we are still basking in the afterglow of the very first StaarCon 2021. And with me is one of the people that we were very happy to have as a speaker at StaarCon, Serena Fox. How are you, Serena?
I'm great, and I'm basking. I am basking. So it's just the perfect way to put it.
Yeah. So let's get right into it. First of all, let's hear a little bit about you. You and I have known each other for a few years. It was, without question, as soon as I had the idea for StaarCon, I was like, okay, Serena, you are part of this, and you'll be part of it this year and next year and every year thereafter, because, that's just how I feel about you.
Yeah.
But for people who don't know you, who are you?
Oh, that's such a giant question. Well, as one of my great old friends would say, I am many things. So, it's hard to put it all in a nutshell, right? So in the time I knew you, I was a shepherdess on a farm with herbs and chickens and ducks and lots of vegetables, and was, working with you.
Yes.
Back then. So it's such a good question. I have done many things in my life. I'm a designer. I have a couple of kids. But the tarot, for me, and many of the modalities have just been game changers for me. And they're how I float and how I breathe and how I dive deep. So bringing this back into so many of those weavings, first off, when I was a little girl, both my grandmothers read the tarot. I didn't know either of them well, but I have one of their Marseille decks, missing 5 cards, but that's okay. I still have the deck. And that really meant something to me. I was raised in an Episcopalian family, and wow, it just wasn't my rhythm. And this was my rhythm, right? So through my life, I've sort of come back to it over and over again. And then solidly, just a bit before I met you, I started the deep sort of dive. So that's been lovely. Over the years, it's been an adjustment lately because I was a really one-on-one reader. I really loved you in my studio, and I created an atmosphere in my studio and welcomed you into that place. And it was a really sacred place and a very safe place. But what was also wonderful about that was that I learned this through having a meetup group about 6 or 7 years ago too. Different people respond to the cards in their own way. And so one of the magical things about the in-person was there were certain people who just, went in deep, and they'd see the visuals and they could hear you speaking, and we're reading and we're dialoguing together and we're doing all this, but they were working their own magic. It's found a little bit challenging in our transition during COVID because I was not much of an online reader. That was the exception in my world. So now, however, with StaarCon and all of this, I was like, wow, I am jazzed. I mean, that whole weekend was just it was so uplifting. I felt so connected to people. I mean, chat rooms and amazing talks. And I mean, I can't tell you the list of everything I enjoyed because it was lengthy and it was wonderful. And when you said that next year it's going to be even more, I actually got nervous. I had a little bit of anxiety going on because because I was like, more? What am I going to do with more? I think I'll have to take like a couple of months off to just do the replays afterwards. But so a little bit about me kind of comes to, I've farmed, I've been a corporate designer, I've been an independent designer. I love nature, I love music, I love art, good food, lovely people. I mean, it's sort of an endless array, plants, flowers, everything. So.
And so now as a designer, of course, you will be designing the program. We'll have a full next year. Of course, the big more for next year is we're really hoping to be in person in Palm Beach Gardens and also online as a hybrid conference. Yeah. So we're very excited about that. So we need a program. So you'll be designing our program.
Yeah.
Downloadable for those people who aren't with us in person, and an actual magazine kind of a program for those people who are.
Yeah.
And I've seen a lot of your design work, and you are good. There's no question about that. So were you an artist when you were young? I mean, did you like draw things and do that kind of stuff?
I drew things. Yeah. I played music. I wanted to be Joni Mitchell, really wanted to marry Neil Young. Yeah, those were the early days. And I did. I wrote a lot of good music when I was really little. I wrote a lot better back then than I do now because there was more of a freedom, and I was less sort of, I have less of the, that sucked kind of thing. You just wrote a song when you were a kid. But anyway, and I always had a sketchbook, and I was very, into just nature, drawing nature and people and journaling, years and years of journals. So yeah, that's always been with me. I was talking to Arwen earlier today, because we're doing some stuff together. And that was really fun because, of course, we did the Cartomancer together for a while. And that's how I know her. And we went to the Reader Studio together. And she's just a charm. I adore her. So we were talking about, where was I going with that? Well, anyway, lost my train of thought on that completely. But thinking about things like, where you go now and the design stuff. And she asked me, she said, so where are you with this? What are you doing in your design work? Because my design work, particularly when I sold the farm and I, lost my main clientele, were local people who were within an hour away from me. And then the COVID hit, so things changed a lot. I started doing more design work and corporate design work. And what I really realized is I love designing for you. I love designing for Arwen. I love designing for somebody who wants to get a CD out in the world or, a poster for their event and things like that. But I'm kind of, my corporate years of design just doesn't kind of, doesn't do the same. Like, okay, so Life, Art, and Story Medicine. It's a program about living in alignment. Mm-hmm. I am far more in alignment when I'm in my Life, Art, and Story Medicine than when I'm in my corporate to do. Not that I don't appreciate everything in that world, and I do, but this is my family here, and I feel very strongly and deeply connected that way. Mm. Yeah.
Well, and that's, one of the great things about having an annual conference is we really do build that sort of family community thing, It's a great thing. Yeah. So I want to go back to something you said earlier. As a reader, where primarily you were seeing clients in person, but one thing you haven't mentioned that I know about you is, okay, you were on a farm in Vermont where there aren't that many people. And yet you were able to cultivate this community with meetups and people coming for readings and actually build something sustainable.
Yeah, that was just so, this is the stuff that stirs my heart. So, for instance, starting that meetup group in Montpelier, Vermont, which is our capital. Well, capital of the state of Vermont. We do have one. And people really wanted to show up. And it was on Friday, late afternoon, evening, and people would come who did the I Ching or did runes, and people who just wanted to learn the tarot and get immersed in tarot. And this was a real eye-opener too, because we would have times where we would take a card out from, however many decks. We put the I don't know, the page of cups from X amount of decks, and then ask people what they thought about that card.
Mm-hmm.
And it was so interesting to have people do their own interpretations and begin to sing their own songs.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what brought me back to the farm and having more clients then, and then starting Life Art and Story Medicine, really because I heard so many people say, I don't know where to go. I don't know the next step. I'm trapped here. And then you start working with the archetypes. You start working with the cards. You start working with some herbs. You start working with whatever the modality. And there's so many of them that somebody resonates with, and they start creating their own path. So like one of the first questions I ask people is, it's just sort of a fun one. It's like, okay, when somebody asks you at a cocktail party, what do you do? What do you answer? And how do you feel about it?
Mm.
And so the vast majority of my clients might be moms, and they would say they're raising their kids. I never know what to say at a cocktail party. And it'd be like, oh, wow. And there was this odd piece of, because there wasn't a title beyond mom or something like that, that they were sinking down instead of radiating.
Mm-hmm.
So same with the reading of the tarot, right? It's just so wonderful to have this dialogue and the story and the empowerment that happens because of that. It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah. Yeah. So now you're still in Vermont, but in a different location. Is that right?
Yeah, even more rural one. Mm-hmm.
Even more. And so you are seeing some clients online now during COVID, are you?
Oh, yeah. It's been great. I mean, I have to say, well, part of the reason I'm working with Arwen a little bit is to help me get a little bit more savvy with the online. And I took Jenna's course yesterday, which was fabulous.
Mm-hmm.
And just it was an intuitive marketing course. Her she's so good at that. She's so good at that.
She is.
So it's sort of, I've been in a place where I haven't had to do much. And because it was in person, now I've had to really go, oh, okay. I may not be a big fan of all that's internet, but it's fantastic. And wow, am I grateful. The weekend of StaarCon, I was literally walking on clouds. I was so happy to be with people and so happy to hear people speak and teach. And I just, especially after this year of being, not sitting with your fellow tarot or rune thrower or whatever and having tea, that it was just, wow, it was healing. It was like a reset button. It's really, really helpful.
It's such an interesting thing because, of course, we planned StaarCon long before COVID, and we would have been doing this podcast no matter what, podcast about StaarCon. But if we look back at all of the episodes that we have done, each one in its own way has been about how we mystical people are dealing with COVID. I mean, it really is.
Yeah.
We've talked about it in every episode because how do you not?
Yeah.
And of course, it impacted StaarCon significantly, moving it from a completely in-person conference to a completely online conference. And now going forward, hopefully, a hybrid conference for the rest of eternity. And it's interesting that it has changed our industry. It has changed us. But man, have we persevered.
Yeah, totally. I did. This is what Arwen and I were talking about. I mean, wow, that we've come through this short amount of time.
Yeah.
And still been able to. There's also another thing. Not everything is always so cohesive. And somehow this necessarily was. Do you follow me on that?
No, I don't. Talk to me.
So I often look, I'm always hungry to hear about your interpretations and somebody else's new idea and what has somebody else launched as a program, and always thirsty for that. But there's never a dialogue so much, right? And what I loved about it was that we all really got to be in dialogue, like you are when you're at the reader's studio. You're in dialogue all weekend until you go home and you go, whoa, gotta be quiet. So yeah, I found that this opening of the doors, just like being in the class yesterday, and you have, people, I don't want to say like-minded because that just feels wrong, but you have people that are impassioned by something and they're chatting and they're asking questions, and it's like giving soil to a plant. I just think as spiritualists, it gives us all so much more possibility to sprout and grow and, be vibrant, be much more vibrant than when we're just on our own, turning our cards, doing our own thing. It's inspiring.
Sure.
Yeah.
Now, speaking of plants, you've mentioned herbs a few times. What kind of herbology do you do?
I love the plants. I love the plants. I mean, well, I worked for Herb and Moonshine for 10 years, which was my introduction to herbs. I went to their school. I went to another school, Mandala Botanicals. And basically, the first time I went face to face with a mullein plant, my life was changed. And I use the herbs in my work, as you know. It's not everybody's thing, but I post about it a lot on my site, and using the different things that we can use in our work to empower. And it's like spellcrafting, right? So in the herbs themselves are just such a beautiful way to heal and to work in life. And if they're your thing, you know what a great cup of Tulsi rose nettle tea with lemon balm can do for you. And you just know that. And it's like it's its own magic. And they are the plants. They were here long before us. They have tons to teach, and they do teach. So yeah, I'm crazy about the herbs, but I'm also crazy about them for our work in a reading, or in manifesting, or in protection, or in any of that. So creating, satchels and talismans, and spreading a certain tarot spread with a particular herb to help empower the outcome. Whatever it is that you need to be.
Hold up. So you lay out the cards, and then you might sprinkle herbs upon the cards?
Yes. So like what's behind me here, this is a really good example. This isn't my spell. This actually comes from a book, this little deck here that I've had for years. But it's the same idea, because this is a love spell behind me. And so it's got roses and it's got cinnamon, right? So these are all a part of empowering the spell.
Wow.
Yeah. So if you're looking for love in your life and you want a little love pouch, it's awful nice to have that love pouch by your bed. And then maybe you have a little quartz crystal that you carry in your pocket, or however you carry, or if you work with crystals at all. But it's all about those correspondences, and it's all about empowering that intention.
So one thing that I've noticed is you've talked about ingesting herbs.
Yeah.
And you've also talked about using them magically.
Totally.
And very often I think people are more one or the other, the medicinals or the magic, or the cooking.
Right.
And I feel like you're all three. Is that right?
Oh yeah.
Nice.
For sure.
Nice.
Yeah. And I'm very mindful in the kitchen. That's just another great way of, and if you take it down to the way you feel when you are part of your story. So if I'm aware enough to know that I'm getting a little sick, and I'm going to maybe add some turmeric or ginger or things like that to my food, or make a nettle and elderberry brew of some sort. I mean, that's magic. It's science, it's magic, it's all of it. But when they're part of your knowing, everything's just a little stronger if you know what I'm saying. Everything's just a little bit more in alignment. There's a harmony in it, as opposed to things being frayed, detached. I don't know why I'm doing this. I don't know where I'm going. things become more purposeful and therefore they're more healthy.
Wow, that's fabulous. I love that.
It's so cool.
So I know you have a few presences, if you will, on the internet. Tell us how people can find you and what they can find when they look for you.
Oh, okay. Well, so magicoma.com is where I have a group of people that work with me. So we have astrology, we have tarot. That's where my class offerings are. There's cards of the week. You can go every week and check out what the card spread of the week is. And that one's really fun because it's just some nice guidance, and it usually has some kind of maybe a quote or a correspondence in an herb or in whatever. So whatever comes through, like it might be a card. After the reading, it might be you might want to hang out with Temperance this week. You know what I mean? So I love that part. But there's also stuff on Ogums. There's some links out to a goddess education site, some poetry, little blogging about food, Wheel of the Year. So there's a lot of stuff on there. And then I am beanofthefields.com, which is just where I do my plant work, some poetry, some music, some things that is just sort of it's kind of my reflection online. Besides that, it's my sort of merged business site that lets anybody know if they go to beaninc.me, they can see the graphic work I do, the Magic Oma work. They can see all the different things that I get involved with. Because I do like to get involved with things, and it's actually, sometimes I need to get involved with a little less.
Well, you are the person of many things.
Yeah.
So I have two questions about that, though. First of all, when you first told me about Magic Oma, my reaction was, what does that mean? What is an Oma? So if there's anyone else out there who doesn't know, please tell us.
This is a good point because, I'll start this off by saying a little story in my conversation with Arwen today, which is that she was like, oh, I have an Oma. So Oma, like in Germany and in many parts of the world, and your Oma is your grandma, and Magic Oma is a spiritual grandma. She's like your wisdom keeper. So that's the idea of the name. We have thought of changing it, and I'm afraid to tell you why, because if I tell you why, it'll never leave your head and you will never look at the name of the company again. So I'm going to leave it a secret. And if you figure it out, I'll give you $50, but that's for a different time.
I think I probably do know or something similar, but we'll do that. We'll do that privately.
So for me, it's really important, and I haven't left it because it came to me in a journey work. So it's very important part. The site it was originally founded as a place for nourishment and collaboration.
I love it, and I love the title now that I know what it means. Because it is honoring of the Crone.
Yes. And the wisdom of the Crone. And yet there are a lot of younger voices there too. For instance, there's the Word Witch is on there, and she's about 30 some odd years old. She's a brilliant writer, ridiculously brilliant writer who sometimes out of the blue will submit something. And it may be once a year, but when it happens, it's a beautiful piece. And so I love the collaborative nature because actually the people who are collaborating here are also a very wide range of ages. There are a lot of you've got the triple goddess behind that site for sure, and all the work that comes out of it.
Nice. And why are you a bean?
So Serena Bean, Beanbag, Seenie Bean, those were my nicknames as a child. So Bean of the Field. Because my nickname was Bean comes from the fact that I am a field child. I love the field. I love wildflowers. And if you ever didn't know where I was, just look out in the field. That's what I be.
And now you are in many fields.
Yeah, and in trees. I'm many things now. So I hang out in the woods too, and stone walls and waterfalls.
Wonderful. So if people want to have a reading with you or want to take a class with you, the easiest way for them to find you?
is magicoma.com.
Beautiful. Beautiful. And your presentation, you've mentioned it a couple of times here today, your presentation at StaarCon, Life, Art, and Story Medicine, is part of this larger thing that you do, yeah?
Yeah. Life, Art, and Story Medicine actually also evolved into, it is a part of the larger thing that I do because it incorporates so much. The modalities. I mean, the tarot is a part of it, and oracle cards and runes, but also working with Carolyn Mrs. Archetype cards are a very important part of the beginning, because part of this is how is it that can you get in touch with the person that you are and most want to be? And what are the tools that can help you radiate out into the world in that way? So it incorporates lots of stuff, but ultimately it's the person who journeys through it, which includes journeying, journaling, artwork. There are a lot of things in it. But if the person in the end isn't really into herbs, then that was a small little chapter introduction, but that's not their thing. If they end up being hugely into moon cycles, they've learned that that's something they can take on with them. For me, what was really great about that program was not only, the greatest thing was seeing people come out of the program with a song, with some powered voice, just some, I don't want to say direction, because it's not just that. It's like a core essence kind of thing, right? The second really beautiful thing is how many people wanted to continue, but you don't continue in the Life, Art, and Story. It's sort of a spiritual counsel. Mm-hmm. And it's just, it is a testament to our practice on a regular basis with all the things that really nourish us. Turning a card every morning, creating an altar in your house, putting sticky notes some places that say permission, for instance, right? Tools that help us sort of, I'm going to say the Seven of Swords, get out of your own way. That was your interpretation.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. I'm like, yeah, get out of your own way. You're right. So that is a lot of it. And re-voicing things, like some people have in their head, like, I'm just a lowly homeschooling mom. I have no credentials. And wow, could it not be more opposite?
Right.
Re-language. You start to re-language. It's fantastic. And people grow. Then they're like the flowers, it's just, it is such a beautiful thing to see people become and live in an empowered way where they, everybody got a bad day, but you can say like, I know I have my tools. I have my tools. I know what to put into place to live in my radiant alignment.
Wow. And at the end of the day, Serena, when we look at you being a person who does many things, all those many things become that one thing, don't they?
Yeah.
Where you are someone who helps people come to that place of living in radiant alignment.
Yeah, absolutely. That's my heart's desire, So I might be walking down the street and hear a really good song and I go like, oh, that's a really good one for Christiana. I got to send that one to her. That was the most amazing quote. The quote bombs in through your phone or however it comes in. And it's like, these little pearls of light and beauty that we all give each other. What it kind of comes down to. And just as we were talking about with the exchange of the folks at StaarCon, we're lighting each other's worlds.
Oh, beautiful, beautiful. And of course it's a little ways off still, but we want everyone to mark their calendars for January 21st through 23rd, 2022. If you can be there in person in Palm Beach Gardens, that's great. If you want to join online, that is fine too. But you've got plenty of notice. There's no excuse not to be there. And Serena, we will look forward to seeing you there as well.
Thank you. Me too.
Serena Fox, I want to thank you so much for joining us for this episode of StaarCast. We will be taking about a month-long hiatus, and then we will be back with a whole lot of new episodes. We'll be teaching a lot of great stuff, and we will a little bit at a time. We'll be letting people know all of the great things we will be doing at StaarCon 2022. And I'm so excited that you will be a part of that, Serena.
Me too. I can't wait.
Yeah, me too.
Thanks for joining us for StaarCast. For more information about our annual conference, visit us online at starcon.com. That's StaarCon.com. We are looking forward to seeing you in January.